I'm Alex Hughes. I'm in geography in the School of Geography, Politics and Sociology. I'm now in the position of Dean of Research and Innovation for the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. Crushing, if I'm allowed a second word, quite demoralising. A lot of work we're very emotionally invested in, care deeply about, passionate about. When you are faced with rejection of work that you feel so connected to, it's really hard. Yeah, so it's quite early in my career that I had that first grant application rejection. I'd had some success with a couple of smaller grants. I just don't think that I was prepared for the failure, even though I knew objectively that it's hard to get a research council grant. I just don't think I'd thought about what it might be like for that application to be unsuccessful and to think beyond it. To acknowledge it, it's okay to feel a little bit down and sort of crushed initially. That's can be a normal reaction. People will have different responses. To not sort of deny those feelings and acknowledge them initially. Hopefully not to get too down about it, but to feel that sort of failure in whatever feels right for you. Having a supportive community is really important, and also I think having sight of other people's rejections, which are so often hidden. And I think at that time, having that sight of sort of maybe other people's failures or sort of grant rejections would have been helpful, so that you can see how normal that is. I would perhaps say that back then that was less common to have sort of failures revealed, and so that's something that would have helped, and I think is important now and sort of for the future, is a bit more sharing of these kinds of experiences. I think when confronting failure, failures can be very different when it's just yourself. It can also depend on what other things are going on in your life or your working life at the time, where you are when you hear the news of failure, because now it could land in an email at any point of the day sometimes. So I think all of those factors can affect how failure is experienced. Typically, in any of those scenarios, the first thing is that acknowledgement, and not a sort of denial of that news and then your response to it. And I tend to now accept that more, rather than try to push the failure and the feelings of failure away. It's to sort of sit with that feeling initially. Following that, it's then to see whether there's feedback, whether there are reviewer comments or panel comments, depending on what it is, and to take time to digest them. And it's not always the case that there are logical next steps, but sometimes there are things that you can do. For example, with a failed research grant application, there might be a paper there to be written. It may be that the project can be broken down or maybe built back up. Firstly, to feel what I want to. That's now the self-care routine. There was a time where it was just almost forget about it, try and do something else, and the first thing now is to just feel and sit with the rejection for a short while. And then it's often maybe a nice meal, or I like to swim, so it would be going for a swim, and then often to talk to somebody about it, more than one person, and just again to share the frustration of that rejection, and then from there to sort of pick myself up a little bit and then think about the next step. How normal it is, I wish it wasn't, but it is, and then that some good things can come out of that failure in terms of new ideas, new projects, and also learning from the process, and being able to share that learning with other people, because it's something that we all experience at different times. So having that experience is something that can be shared with others and talked through. I think most importantly is that more can come from the piece of work that has been rejected in some way, whether that is new ideas, new projects, new things to write, or teaming up with other people. It's not the end of the road. Rejection's not necessarily the end of the road. I still find it very hard to experience rejection and to feel failure. It happens as a normal part of the work that I do, and I would say I've learnt tips for addressing rejection. I try to put in practice advice received, think about self-care and think about processing decisions and think about next steps. But I still find it incredibly difficult. The importance of collegiality in addressing and coping really remains, I think, at all career stages. I think it's just really important. I'm keen to sort of share my experiences and advice, but I'm still learning to try to experience rejection and to think about sort of failing forward in various ways, and it's not always easy. So we're all always learning.